Well, hello and welcome to today's virtual field day hosted by the Iowa Learning Farms. It is 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Liz Ripley. I'm a conservation and cover crop outreach specialist with the Iowa Learning Farms. We were established in 2004 and we're based on campus at Iowa State University. Our goal is to build a culture of conservation by working with farmers, landowners, and researchers to implement practices that both improve water quality and soil health while remaining profitable. These events and others are made possible thanks to our great partners, which include the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, Iowa State University Extension and Outreach, Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, US EPA Section 319, Conservation Districts of Iowa, Iowa Farm Bureau, Practical Farmers of Iowa, GrowMark, Iowa Agricultural Water Alliance, Iowa Corn, and the Iowa Nutrient Research Center. And we're really thrilled to be partnered today with the Watershed Management Authority of the Upper Iowa Watershed and looking at what they're doing up there. So just a few housekeeping things before we get too much further. I do ask that you remain muted with your videos off while we're playing the video footage that we captured in the field at one of these project sites that we're going to focus on today. But then after the video and just brief presentation, you'll be able to unmute, ask your questions, or you can submit them at any time in the chat box once we get started here. After today's presentation, which again is being recorded, you will get an email that will include the link to today's virtual field day so you can share with others or go back and refresh yourself on something. There's also going to be a link to a quick evaluation to give us feedback on today's virtual field day. So we appreciate it if you could fill that out and submit it as soon as you are able. So today we're going to be focusing on road detention structures, adapting current infrastructure for flood resiliency and nutrient reduction in the Upper Iowa Watershed, which is located in Northeast Iowa. We have Matt Frana, a project coordinator with both the Turkey River Watershed and the Upper Iowa River Watershed. So again, feel free to submit those questions at any time in the chat, and we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at these project sites with our video.
My name is Matt Frana, project coordinator with the Upper Iowa Watershed Project. Working with the Upper Iowa Watershed Management Authority. Our main goals with these projects are to protect against flooding, improve and protect water quality, enhance wildlife habitat, with the main goal of allowing the community to become more flood resilient after big major rain events. So what we are doing with these road projects is we're able to look at locations in the county where we can adapt current infrastructure in order to detain water short term. In this case, we are able to raise the road, modify the culvert that was there, and then be able to pool water back behind it. And then after a heavy rain event, water will then get stored behind this and be able to slowly release. So then that way that peak flow event downstream is reduced with the hopes of reducing flood damage by installing these. So eventually this permanent pool will come up to this pipe here, and this will be the primary outlet for this pond. And then the flood storage will be up to this larger pipe here, and then we have the larger pipe in place so that way the water doesn't overtop the road after a big rain event. It'll go down through. And then, so actually with this project here, we raised the road about 10 feet, which the county really likes because it just makes the road safer. And we got some better infrastructure put in because of that as well. So. This one is not connected to a stream. There's probably a kind of a seep spring up above here where water's coming in. At this location, there was actually a pond here originally that the dike was already kind of past its life expectancy. It had been about 40 years old. There was trees in it and just was silted in, wasn't really functioning the way it was supposed to anymore. the landowner had contacted me to maybe see about redoing the pond and stuff, and I knew we were looking for more of these road structure type projects. And so talked to him about maybe the possibility of doing that, looked into it, and it turned out that that was going to be a good solution to the problem. So we were able to utilize the old structure, the dirt and stuff for that to help build up the road, and just kind of clean things up, make it a better functioning pond with wetland ecosystem. There'll also be, we'll have native vegetation planted around this as well. So just kind of enhancing the wildlife benefit here. This drainage area here is about 80 acres, and now with the improved road benefits, we're going to see probably a reduction in about 50 to 60% after a heavy rain event, from 4.5 to 7.5 inches in 24 hours that this could handle. And so when you're reducing stream flow by about 50% downstream of that, that can make a difference, especially when you do multiple of these in the same area. This probably got finished up about a month ago. They still got to come back and seed the native vegetation. It was too late in the season to seed that at the time that they were done with all the dirt work. But then the structure and the road itself will also be, or not the road, but just the sides, will be seeded with native vegetation too. So this will be all natives around here. And I guess some of the other benefits to doing projects like these versus on private land when you're working with the road structures is then the county kind of takes control of them. So they become pretty much a perpetual project that should be around forever as long as they're maintained. Where you may have with some of these other pond structures or that on private landowner land that, after 40 or 50 years, we really don't know what's going to happen with them. It's going to be up to the landowner to continue to maintain those, or, at some point that they're going to reach their life expectancy. And so with these, there may be a little bit more upfront cost, but long term, they're going to be around forever. So yeah, as far as what the county actually is going to be maintaining, with the natives and stuff, the landowner has agreed to maintain that. They're very interested in the wildlife habitat. But as far as what the county will maintain and kind of have an easement over is the pool at which the water could get to before it overtopped the road. And so the main thing that they'll be watching for with the county maintenance is, any debris that would get into the pipe that could potentially block that. And then if, it gets really sedimented in where it's not really functioning the way it was supposed to, would be another thing that they would be watching and stuff. So yeah, this site in particular too, this is one of the only ones we actually, we got to have another one contracted that will have a permanent pool, but actually a lot of these sites, they won't hold a permanent pool. There's different reasons for that. Some of them is that they have a perennial stream going through them, and so with the permitting, Army Corps permitting and stuff, the mitigation for those just wasn't feasible for us to deal with these projects. And some of them are on pastures too, where the landowner wasn't really looking for a pond or, a permanent pool. And in those cases, we may not be gaining the wildlife and nutrient reduction and sediment benefits from having a permanent pool, but the flood reduction benefits are going to be higher because there's just going to be more storage for that water, and just be able to slow that a larger percentage of water down, I guess, with some of these. We've probably installed a little over 30 practices. It's installed or contracted to install. As far as them being tested, we really haven't. It's been fortunate, I guess, that the weather's been pretty decent for us when we started getting into doing construction for these projects. So construction has been, for the most part, going pretty good, pretty smooth, and haven't had to deal with a lot of issues with that, which is fortunate. So yeah, I think the largest kind of rain event we had earlier or this summer was, we probably had one that was like 3 to 4 inches in some places in 24 hours, or maybe a little bit more of that in certain spots. And we didn't see really any issues with any of our structures being able to handle that. These are typically, designed to hold more of a control more of a probably 6.5 to 7 inch rain, 24 hours. And so that's when we get those, that's where they'll really be tested, I guess. Yeah, definitely some unique challenges working in this karst Northeast Iowa landscape. Just selecting the sites, being aware of, the type of bedrock you got below the sites. We did have a few sites that we brought Iowa Geological Survey in just to do some additional testing, getting a better idea with electrical resistivity imagery, seeing what type of bedrock is below where we're going to be pooling water, ensure that there's no significant big fractures that could potentially turn into sinkholes. So we want to be sure of that. And there's certain places in the county where that's more prevalent, more of a risk. The spot where we're at here, we really don't have that risk in this part of the county, but there was definitely a few of these projects that we looked at a little bit closer with that. The other thing that becomes a challenge too is getting the adequate building material or soils that we need with the clay content to build these structures, making sure that we had enough of that within a reasonable distance of the site. So a lot of these are kind of built in pasture areas, so we're not going to disturb cropland with the pooling of water. And so being able to get the majority of our material from more of a pasture or set aside area that's not being utilized for cropland is typically areas that we're targeting for these practices. I know we had a few projects that we started looking into and realizing that the majority of the construction material was going to need to come from a crop field, and the landowners kind of were turned off by that, which was understandable because, the compaction from construction and stuff would really damage some of their cropland. And so that was something that could be a challenge just because, a lot of times we don't have a lot of soil or depth to bedrock between our soil, or we don't have a thick soil layer to work with. And so that was maybe one of our challenges too. My favorite thing working with the project was probably just getting to know all the people in the area and the community, working with these projects. We've had phenomenal just interest in doing these projects. For the most part, all the landowners have been really easy to work with, are interested in helping out the community with these projects by reducing, the potential of flooding downstream. And then, even in this area, we've done several of these road projects, and the benefits just even in the local area for some of the landowners and farmers might be just they might have to fix a fence less frequently, and just dealing with their pasture land or farm fields and stuff, getting messed up quite as bad as they maybe normally would have. So yeah, that's been good.
All right. So I know Matt has some more information he's going to share with us now. And then again, at any time, feel free to submit your questions in the chat. I'll get those to Matt. You can also, once he's done with his presentation, simply unmute and ask questions directly of him. Over to you, Matt.
Alrighty. Well, let's see if we get this up here. All right. Is that showing up all right for you?
Looks great.
All right. All right. I'm Matt Frada. Once again, Watershed Project Coordinator with the Wichita County Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm just going to go maybe a little more detail as far as what we're looking for with some of these projects. I'll give you a little background just on the grant that we had received in order to fund these projects. 2016, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development awarded the state of Iowa a $97 million grant for disaster resilience. And the proposal was the Iowa Watershed Approach for Urban and Rural Resilience. The Upper Iowa Watershed was one of 9 watersheds in the state that received some funding for this. And just the background to Iowa Watershed Approach represents a program through which Iowans are working together to address factors that contribute to flooding. It partners with other statewide programs to reduce flooding and improve water quality, such as Iowa Flood Mitigation Program and the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. And then, the Upper Iowa Watershed received $5.7 million of that grant. Around $4 million was, I guess, to be utilized for putting in some of these projects, these water detention projects. And then within the Upper Iowa Watershed, we selected 6 sub-watersheds to do projects in, just to kind of focus those in on certain areas. The sub-watersheds in blue are the ones that were picked. And then just to kind of go over again, what is a road detention structure? It's kind of where the terrain allowed us to build up the roads, and we can utilize the roads as dams to control water after big rain events and kind of slowly release behind the road. This is that same project that we were at for the interview. Just if you could see my mouse here, I'd say about right in here was where the old structure was that we eliminated, and then utilized some of that and some of the surrounding area to build up the road here. And then advantage of the road structures, I guess I kind of went over that in the video, but just again, we're going to have a little bit safer roads, reduced slope, a little wider, less potential for the roads to be washed over. And then the county, you got perpetual maintenance with the county. As far as, once these are established, they should be there forever pretty much. So with the Upper Iowa funds, we were able to do 7 of these road projects. As you can see, there was certain spots where we did a lot of them that just had the ideal terrain and where the roads were at. It just worked out really well. Some of these other spots, like the 10-mile watershed, we didn't able to do any of them. And that was mainly because, the terrain there is a little flatter. The roads just didn't cross in the right spots where it was feasible to do them really. And kind of the same thing in the Coon Creek watershed. There just wasn't a lot of opportunity to do these. We had some opportunities up north of Decorah, kind of in the Canoe Creek watersheds. Some of the issues there were, we did have one that we were going forward with, and we had some archaeological concerns that kind of stopped the project, I guess. So, and then that's more where those geologic concerns were with sinkholes and stuff. We had to be a little more careful with. We had a couple projects that we thought we were going to go through up there, and then landowner decided to back out. Just having his renter kind of wasn't a big fan of some of the cropland going to be messed up. So fortunately that happened there. But yeah, we had quite a few kind of, and this would be the Trout Creek and Northernest watersheds. And so you can kind of see here with the LiDAR imagery, the green are the spots where we've either built or have contracted to build projects for next spring. We did 5 in this area. We got 3 of them built and 2 will be built next spring here. But you can kind of see the black is the roads and how they just happen to be in the right spot where you could kind of control that top of the watershed. And there's actually several other good locations to put in more of these up here where you could really control the top of this watershed just with the roads pretty well. Just didn't have enough funds with the grant. We had to go further with some of these maybe the landowners weren't interested in doing something, and some of them we just didn't really even pursue just because of the funding or budget and stuff. So this is just kind of looking more, I use LiDAR a lot from the beginning to kind of identify some of these spots to go look into. So this is a LiDAR location. Look for spots where you could back up water, where there's kind of that dip in the road. So then kind of look for those initially, and then look at the aerial imagery and see if there's any concerning spots in those areas. Like I was saying earlier, typically looking for pasture areas where we're not going to be putting water over buildings or affecting farmsteads, affecting cropland. This one too, we also had good borrow source really close by. And so this is that same site that was just in the previous slide. And so you can see here we have a gravel road that has a dip in it, some pasture areas that would be pooling over when there is a big rain event. And some dips and roads, targeting sites. We stuck with gravel roads, just kind of one of those things where we're not going to really want to tear up any paved roads unless that paved road happens to be getting redone or something. Be one when maybe that would work out, but for the most part, going for gravel road areas. We're trying to stay within like 100 acres to 1,000 acre drainage area, just because too small, you're really probably not having enough impact to maybe justify some of the cost. And then you get too big, and then you're running into issues for construction material and different things like that. And then the geological concerns, kind of went over that. Fractured bedrock, do we have that issues in these areas? This area didn't. And then truck construction material, where's that coming from? Some of the things we're thinking about. Other things too is locations with old infrastructure that could be replaced or updated, or the county's thinking about replacing or updating. Where a lot of this too was talking with the county engineer and just seeing where maybe water flows over the road frequently, that we could build those areas up. And if there's any plans for future road maintenance, if they have a bridge or culvert that they are planning on placing in the future, where are those spots at that we can kind of look into. So that bridge there that was just shown, this is one of our locations. Decided to do a cement culvert through this area. I'll just kind of progress through this project here. There's a cement culvert bridge that was taken out, and just building up the road there. This project here, I think we built up the road a little over 8 feet. We built it out quite a bit. It's the back side of it there. That was kind of as it was getting finished up. You kind of see that bridge level before was right in here. Now it's built up quite a bit. And then just kind of give you an idea of the design that was made for it. The blue line, the light blue line here indicates kind of the 10-year pool or the 10-year rain event pool. And then the orange line is, I believe that was up to like a 500-year rain event. So pretty big one. And that's what it would take for it to overtop the road at that point. Some of the other things, as soon as I kind of had some sites in mind, typically talk to the county engineer a little bit about them. Some other things to look at, I figured out, power lines. There's a few of these where the power poles had to be relocated. Streams, kind of went over that, I guess. Once we had a site identified, typically you'd either contact the landowner first or kind of get a preliminary design in place with our engineer, just to show the landowner and kind of get an idea of what it was gonna, I guess, take to do the project. Then some things, talking with the landowners if they wanted a permanent pool or not, where potential borrow locations. Then once we kind of got spot established, the landowner was on board going forward. We were do a survey, some preliminary or some investigations, check out the soils, geology of the area. Had to do some archaeological investigations. Those all pass, go good. You get the final design together, and then permitting to kind of get that taken care of. I guess I kind of went over this with in the the video, but just to reiterate, the pool or no pool, you know, there's some good spots and good locations for pools. And then it was kind of up to the landowner as well if they wanted one or didn't want one, depending on what their land use of the area was. And I guess one of the big things too for us is if there was a perennial stream, we're definitely probably not going to try to do a pool, just because with permitting through the Army Corps, it gets really tough when you're messing with a perennial stream as far as mitigating that. So I try to avoid that extra complication. Then I was kind of talking about too a few of the different project sites that we had looked into. These red X's here are road projects that we were initially investigating, and we had to do. And then the yellow diamonds, those represent map sinkholes. And then there's also the map to the right here that shows the different bedrock layers, so you can see where sinkholes are really prevalent in certain spots where the bedrock layer, depending on the bedrock layer, if that's like the closest bedrock layer to the surface, I guess, much more susceptible to sinkholes and fractures. And so we did a little bit more investigation on these sites to make sure that we weren't going to be pulling water over some sort of fracture that would all of a sudden turn into a sinkhole or something like that. Fortunately, the landlord backed out on these sites. That was the one I mentioned, I guess, with the renter that kind of talked him out of it. But that was just some concerns that we had and had to be aware of, I guess. And then once we kind of get to that point too, we had to determine easements. Once we knew we were moving forward, everything was looking like it was going to be a go ahead project. And I figured that out. And what we did with easements is we needed an easement for any part of that structure that we're building that went beyond the road, the current road right away, county right away, I guess. And for that, we paid 100% of the land value. That land value was determined by a certified land appraiser. Typically, on average, I think for that portion, we paid, around $4,000 an acre for any of that area. And then anything that was going to be potential temporary pool. So we figured out what elevation, at what point the water would pool to the point where it overtop the road. And then we also got an easement for that. So then now the county has the right to back up water to that elevation perpetually. And so that, paid landowners for that easement as well. That ended up being usually around 3,000 an acre. And then if the landowner wanted a permanent pool, since that was at their wishes and didn't provide, that water storage, we didn't pay them on the acres that were in permanent pool. And then landowners too, identify and borrow sites. And if we had to get borrow outside the permanent pool, then we were paying $1 per cubic yard for that material. Of the 7 projects, it's kind of, I gave some, I guess, stats and stuff on the 7 road projects that we ended up. Well, 5 of them were constructed. 2 of them will be constructed this spring. The drainage area ranged from 79 to about 952 acres. So the average drainage area of all the 7 projects, about 340 acres. Total drainage area we'll be controlling with these 7 projects is going to be just under 2,400 acres. Just kind of went, there's different drainage or rain event stream flow reductions, and they all kind of varied depending on the pipe sizing and the storage capacity of each site. Typically, we had a range of 15 to 60% reductions in the 50-year rain event. And then in the 50-year rain event, that'd be 6.5 inches in 24 hours. So the average 43% reduction across just under 2,400 acres. stream flow reduction after a 6.5-inch rain. The costs range from, and this includes the easement purchases, not just the construction costs, but easement purchases, and then the engineering design costs too, which is kind of estimated, I guess. But for the projects range from about $200,000 to $500,000. Average cost, we're looking at about $300,000 per project. And total cost for the 7 projects was just over $2 million. As mentioned before, 2 of the projects will have permanent pools. The other 5 will just, you won't really even notice them much and during normal conditions until you get a big rain event and it'll hold water back. Just to give you, I've shown you a couple other project sites. Show you a few pictures from other project sites that we had done this fall. This right-hand corner here, that kind of shows you an idea what the road was like. This one, I would say, was our most cost-effective project that we did. And that was mainly because we didn't have to use much dirt because the road was already high enough. We didn't really even raise the road on this one. And the cement culvert that was there was good. And so you can kind of see in this picture here, well, all we had to do is kind of add to that existing culvert. And we added a culvert that was smaller. And then, so that restricts the water flow coming into this pipe. And then if the water gets up to this height, then it's going to drop down into a bigger pipe and go under the road faster. But you'll have storage up to the top of the road. And since we didn't have to do, we didn't have to put a whole new culvert system in, didn't really have to use a lot of dirt on this one. And this one still controls about 500 acres, and we're still seeing around that 50% reduction. And I think the cost of this one was, I'm trying to think here, go back, was pretty inexpensive compared to some of the other ones for getting the benefit that we got. So that one was just over $215,000 for that project. Another one that we did, this was the one that was up in Canoe Creek, the north part of the county. And then this is the one that was done in Coon Creek in Elmwood County. See this one here, I think we raised the road about 10 feet. And this one was about 8 or 9 feet. And then I just want to point out too that these were not the first road projects done in the area. Between 2014 and 2016, there was a project, Otter Creek Watershed project, and that was being funded through HUD grant as well, done in Fayette County, and they did several road projects there with that grant. And then there's another example of some of the road projects that were done there. And then from 2000 to 2008, Bear Creek Watershed in Wichita County also had kind of a big project going on where they're trying to install different structures. And so as part of that, they did 4 road structure projects there as well. So it was nice to have some of these projects already done in the area that you could visit, talk to the people that were involved in constructing it, and get a better idea of how to go about selecting sites that we ended up building with. And this was the road before the construction. This is after it was built up, and you can see kind of the pool down here. And then, as you know, both, I think Wichita County for sure, I'm pretty sure Fayette County too, both now have on-road structure policy. And so pretty much what they'll do is anytime that they're going to replace a culvert or be doing some road work, need to redo a bridge or a small bridge or something, that they're going to at least look into the possibility of, hey, can we make this into a water detention project as part of this as we update? And so it's something now that they're thinking about as they update their infrastructure. Just, and then I just want to make sure some additional acknowledgements with doing these road projects with we had a lot of NRCS staff help out with technicians, engineers, soil scientists, geologists that kind of assisted with a preliminary investigation of these sites and getting their input. Shy Battery Engineering were the ones that ended up doing the designs for the projects, for the road projects. And then we had two contractors that built these, the ones that were constructed. That'd be Bacon Concrete and Excavating and Marine Construction. And then just, the landowners. I know I mentioned that in the video too, but really none of this is possible without the landowners allowing this. And so just to have good landowners willing to go along with these projects was great to have. But I guess at this point, that's all I have with the presentation. If you guys have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Matt. There have been some questions that have come in, but folks feel free to get more of those submitted as we go along here with questions. You answered a few of them as you went through your presentation.
Okay.
In terms of the cost and the size of the watershed that these are treating. Someone was curious, you mentioned Shy Battery did the engineering, but did they also help with or do the legal easement work as well?
No, I worked with the county attorney mostly on that as far as getting the wording with that, and then would mail those out to the landowners. And so it's between me and the county attorney that worked on those, I guess.
So Northeast Iowa is known for their trout streams. Has there been any studies on the impacts of these projects, either positive or negative, on those trout streams in the area?
Not that I'm aware of, I guess. I know there are some concerns with, and we're trying to be conscientious of this in some of our projects, maybe not necessarily the road projects even so much, but I guess some concerns with if you're blocking a spring or something like that can potentially warm water and not have as much cold water going downstream with the trout like and stuff. So we thought about that with some of these projects. I know we did that at a project we did at Seed Savers, where did a pretty big structure with them, protecting their trout stream that they have going through there. And so we made sure that one wasn't going to hold a permanent pool of water. Just during normal conditions it's going to flow through, but it's a restricted pipe where if they get a big rain event, they'll just hold it temporarily and then let it out. But I would think overall with the holding back the water, slowing it down, that's going to have a positive impact as far as just preventing sediment and stuff going downstream and kind of messing with the trout streams, I guess.
What was the estimated timeline for getting this project from start to finish?
Oh, it started in 2017, and pretty much everything's got to be wrapped up by the end of June this year. And so, yeah, 4 or 5 years. As far as it took a couple of years really to get things rolling as far as where we could really start going after projects, and each one, we're talking a year or two of planning and design work before that they were able to go to construction. So as far as from start to finish, as you're looking at a year or two of time in each one of these projects, I guess.
And there's obviously windows when construction can occur and when it can't, so that also impacts that timeline.
Yeah.
Someone here, it says, Matt, you mentioned that 2 of the projects had pools and the rest did not. What is the difference in design for a roadway project that does create a pool versus no pooling? Are you letting water out in a period of similar to like a wascob as 24 hours? So what kind of structures are you using to create that slow release then?
See how to explain it, because each one is not any of them are quite the same. It's all kind of dependent upon the terrain and the size and stuff. But the ones that don't hold water, you just have that pipe lower and you have a smaller pipe. so during normal flow conditions, that pipe is at the same elevation as the lowest point in the ground where that water would be flowing to. And then if you want a permanent pool, you just raise that pipe up. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know all the details on the different types of pipe and what exactly was used in each situation. But it was dependent upon how much water would be coming down during a given period of time, and it was all calculated through that, I guess.
And for those two that you said had permanent pools, what was the depth or average depth of that permanent pool?
The one that was in the video, I want to say, and I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, probably 10 to 15 feet at least, 15, I think, at the deepest point. And that one should be able to support fish, I guess. The other one that will be constructed in the spring, that's, I think, only going to be maybe 6 feet at the deepest. That one's going to be constructed more as like a wetland, I guess. And so have wetland vegetation around it and stuff, more of a duck pond type situation there.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Matt, great presentation. I sent you a message and I really should have sent it to everyone. So sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
And I apologize if you've addressed this, but I was wondering if you could explain to the group how you went out and did cold calling of landowners for the first time to discuss these projects. Did you call them? Did you set up meetings in person? Did you show them photos of what they might look like? Just if you could walk us through that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So typically what I did, identified these locations. The one in the video was really the only one that the landowner had contacted us first, just looking into some solutions for their pond. But all the other ones was once kind of identified a site. Couple of them, I'd sent out letters to landowners and just seen if they were interested, and then usually follow up. Kind of explain the project, explain what we want to do. Depending on if we did a preliminary design first or not, I might send them that and then follow up with maybe a phone call and go meet with them. The ones that were done in that where we had like 5 of them kind of in a row, they're really close proximity. I identified several other spots beyond those and ended up having kind of get together at a local church community center with. I had sent out letters to all those landowners that would be impacted if we did projects at those sites, and then kind of had a meeting with all of them. Since there was all kind of the same neighborhood, you got a lot of people together that knew each other, neighbors and stuff, and they felt comfortable coming together and kind of asking questions, and I couldn't answer all those questions all at once with those. So when I had that group really close together, I went that route. But typically it was identifying the site, send out a letter to the landowner explaining what I was thinking about, and then following up with them there.
And speaking of community and neighbors' thoughts and things, what's been the local resident feedback on some of these projects where you significantly change the road grade and things like that?
Yeah, there was definitely some that I wonder what the heck was going on and stuff. Curious. I think for the most part, it sounded like positive feedback. I hear some stuff like, what the heck, they spending all this money on what they, and so I think there's some people that maybe don't understand the benefits that are associated with them, but for the most part, and especially, I think, I feel like the landowners that I work with these projects probably talk to their neighbors and kind of maybe helped out as far as, explaining what the benefits were to these projects. But for the most part, it seemed like pretty good reception, I guess, from what I've heard, I guess. I did have another question from Sharon that kind of related to that too. It says, you mentioned that some farmers did not want to participate. Overall, how receptive were the landowners to participation in temporary holding runoff to protect their downstream neighbors? For the most part, it seemed pretty receptive. Like I said, the ones that didn't were probably, they had good reasons to, I think, or at least just a lot of it was going to the impacts to their cropland. The ones I had mentioned that were north of town too. When I first started working with the landowner, it was in CRP. So he was like, yeah, we can do whatever, not concerned with that. And CRP is not concerned with temporary water storage. And so there really wasn't going to be an impact to him. But during our process of investigation and design and planning, his CRP contract expired, and it was kind of one of those weird years where since he already had it in for over 15 years, he couldn't re-enroll it. And so then he ended up, going back to farming it or renting it out to a farmer that wants to do organic farming and stuff. And so the impacts that we were going to have during the construction or that right after that, he just converted it. I think that was maybe the reason that they backed out on it or kind of got talked out of it. I think those are spots maybe in the future though that funding like this goes back around, or the county gets funding for doing similar type of projects, that they could come back to and maybe say, hey, we talked to you about this in the past, we knew that they're good spots, we got far enough along with the investigation process to know, and so down the road might have potential, I guess.
So you shared that policy for Wichita County, likely tied to funding, but do they have any projects in the works that they're thinking about doing or have identified to do locally?
I know they've identified a few. I'm not real for sure, or some spots are talked about it, but I'm not for sure them really going forward with them. I know I did talk to Howard County, and they were considering, because I think like the American Rescue Plan funds that could be utilized for doing these projects, and actually that our budget, we're getting kind of close with our budget, and so we're able to use some of that funds for the couple remaining road projects to make sure that those were be able to get finished. And so that they were looking at doing maybe one or two of these road projects in Howard County with those funds too. So that's potential there.
Well, that's the questions that I have currently in the chat. So I don't know if any more came into you, but in the meantime, if folks want to get their questions into the chat or raise their hand, we can get those answered. And I'll put up information if you joined us today for CCA credits. You can get that information to me by 5 p.m. today by sending me an email. That's ejuchems@iastate.edu. Provide your name and your CCA number, and I'll get those credits submitted for you. And then if you perchance are a landowner and are interested in a wetland or an oxbow, you can also email me that information and I'll help connect you with the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship to see if you might have a site that's a good fit for those, or maybe if it's a bioreactor or saturated buffer. And just a quick plug, if you're got cover crops this year, sign up for your crop insurance discount by tomorrow. And lastly, we hope that you can join us in a couple weeks on February 3rd. We'll be looking at conservation perennial vegetation, establishment, and care. So we've got a great program with Drs. Adam Janke and Mark Licht set up for you on February 3rd at 1 p.m. So we hope you can join us then. And I'll see if I had any more questions come in. It looks like no. So Matt, if you want to put your email in the chat box for folks as well, if they have follow-up questions, they can reach out to you directly because you're staying in the area even as the Upper Iowa Watershed Project winds down. So if they have questions or want to follow up as a local, they can get a hold of you to see if they have a site for you.
Okay. Yeah. Got to figure out how to do this.
If not, I can pull up your email real quick too, or you can just say it out loud and I'll get it typed in for you.
I do have it on my presentation. It'd be Matt, MATT.FRANA @IA.NAC. Oh, there it is right there. Yeah, there you go.
Found it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you can join us in a couple weeks. And until then, stay warm and enjoy the pending snow that's coming for Iowa.